Hello, and welcome to Season 2 of Enchanting Economics in New Mexico. This podcast is a production of Bieber, the recognized expert in socioeconomic data for the state of New Mexico. Once again, your hosts are myself, Rayanne McKernan, and Bieber's programmer, Suzan Reagan. Today, we have our databank manager, Suzan Reagan, here to talk with us about our favorite subject, the census. Suzan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rayanne. This will be fun.
So this is our first episode of Season 2. We are a month and a half-ish into 2021. When will the 2020 census data be available?
Well, that is a really good question. As of right now, apportionment counts, and apportionment is different than redistricting. Apportionment counts will be available by the end of April or April 30th. And just remember, apportionment counts tell us how many representatives we'll have in Congress. New Mexico is not slated to gain or lose any, we're not anywhere close to gaining or losing any seats. But all the states around us, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas, are expected to gain seats, and there are about 10 states that, mostly in the Northwest, I think the Northeast, are expected to lose some seats. And I think California is one of those too. So just, that's our first look is going to be April 30th. Now, redistricting data was slated to come out in July, and redistricting is what we use to set our internal to the state legislative, our voting rights. And initially, it looked like it was going to come out July 30th, but as of Monday of this week, the Census Bureau announced that they'll be delivering the redistricting data September 30th. And redistricting data is a little bit different than any other data. Like apportionment is just statewide counts. Redistricting is 6 different tables, and it's race for the voting age people, it's Hispanic and race, and then it's Hispanic and race for voting age, and also some housing occupancy status and group quarters populations. So basically there are 6 tables, and the templates or the proposed table formats were released. The prototype data was released back in February of 2019. So if somebody wants to see what those tables look like, they could contact me and I'll help them figure out, because I'm busy doing that. I'm looking at do I have template tables that I can bring data into when the data is available. The other thing is who is going to receive this data. And initially, redistricting data and apportionment data is all submitted to the governor and legislative leadership, and then redistricting commissions if they exist in states. So looking at this data, it gets released a little bit differently. And then after those people have acknowledged that they've received the data, and they can either get it on physical media, a flash drive or a DVD, or they can download it from data.census.gov through embargo access. Once the Census Bureau gets an okay that all of the people who were legally required to have the data to do redistricting have it, they will then release it publicly on data.census.gov and on their FTP sites. So I'm excited to see that coming up soon.
Okay. So you mentioned redistricting. How will the redistricting data be delivered?
I think I covered that in my first answers, but I'm going to answer it again because it's important to note that for governors, legislative leaderships, and redistricting commissions, if they exist, they're going to get that digitally, or they can ask to have it sent by DVD or flash drive. Once they've been confirmed of having received it, then it'll be released to the public, and we will all be able to access it through data.census.gov.
And is this how it's always been in the past, or is this new?
So this is a little bit different. In the past, when the census, like in 2010, when the census released data, they did do it by CDs and DVDs and physical media. and they used to release it in a rolling release for, a group of states at each time. So what's kind of different about this is it's going to be all the states all at once. And then also, once it's available, the public can download it directly from the Census Bureau website. You don't have to wait for hard copies or books or something to come out. So that's exciting. So,
yeah. And given all the difficulties with the collection of the data because of the pandemic and other issues, what can we expect? Will the data be good, and will New Mexico be fairly accurate, or should we expect an undercount?
So that's a really good question. And, ultimately we won't really know until we see the data and are able to analyze it to see how accurate it is. But the Census Bureau has this whole program where they try to evaluate the data. And part of that is they're going to be doing a small independent survey of houses, and they're going to start hiring people soon for that. And that independent survey that's going to run from June of this year to December of this year that survey will be used to evaluate how accurate the data are in the decennial census. Also, the Census Bureau has had a program that they're going to put up called differential privacy. And during the timeline where they've been testing differential privacy and providing some of us high-end using data users sample files or demonstration products is what they call them, we've been able to see how differential privacy, which is going to be the way that they add noise to the data to protect people's confidential information. We've been able to see how that interacts with 2010 data. And initially, when the first couple of demonstration products came out, we were very worried that just even differential privacy might add too much noise to the data and give us very inaccurate census data. Through that interaction, though, they've come back several times with a couple of different demonstration products that address some of the issues we brought up, where we had seen in the initial ones, maybe rural states not getting as accurate a count because it put too much noise into rural data. So I'm actually partially hopeful because of that process and how things got better with each product that they put out, that we might actually see some pretty accurate data. The other thing that I'm really pleased with seeing was that even though we had a pandemic, at the end of the self-count part, 58% of New Mexicans self-responded, and we know that self-response rates are more accurate than if a Census Bureau enumerator goes out and takes your data, or they estimate if they aren't able to get somebody to answer the door, if they estimate who's in the house. In 2010, our self-response rate was 60%, so we only were down 2%. So I'm hopeful that the data we'll get out of 2020 will be as accurate as we saw in 2010, or very close to it. That could change as we look at data, though.
So, worst case scenario, if there is a problem, can it be fixed, and how does it get fixed?
So that's a really good question. As part of the decennial process, when the official numbers are given out to all of the local districts, there's a period of time where there's two things. There's a program called QCR, which is a quality check program that goes on. There's also the program I mentioned where they're going to do an independent survey. It's called post-enumeration survey, to check the accuracy of the data, which could revise the numbers. So we could see revised numbers based on these programs. But also there is a period where the highest official in every elected area could challenge the count, and they have to challenge it based on housing units, or there's some criteria in there, but there's an official way that people can challenge the count and supply data to why the count was wrong and how it should be revised. And so there will be a period of time where those things can happen during the decennial census rollout.
And you already touched on this a little bit, but I just want to go back and make sure we get it covered. I saw that the Census Bureau put out a notice that they're hiring for now the post-enumeration survey. Can you talk more in detail about what that posting is? Because I know there's more than goes into it than just saying, hey, the Census Bureau is hiring again.
Well, they are currently hiring temporary workers, and the expectation is that they'll get hired in May, and that they'll do some training April and May of this year, and that they'll do some training, and then they'll begin doing interviews of houses, that selected number of houses in June, and they're temporary June through November, and then the data that they go out and collect, these post-enumeration survey people, will be used, will be evaluated against the 2020 census all the way through December is when the program is expected to run. They are actually going to start with the list of people who were census takers for the initial 2020 census, because they've already sort of had a feel for how to do that work. And it ought to be, and as anytime you apply for a federal government job, they actually do need to be citizens of the United States. And for more information, the website that you can go to if you're interested in the jobs is 2020census.gov, JOBS. Again, that's 2020census.gov/jobs.
And this is not something that's brand new. They've done this after every decennial census for a while now, right?
Yes, and it's part of the way that they make sure that the data that they collected is accurate.
And I'm assuming these jobs will pay just as nicely as the original census jobs did last year?
In fact, I think they're all in the same pay range as the initial enumerators or the census taker salaries were. And I think in some areas in New Mexico that was $15 an hour, and some areas it was higher.
Yeah, I think down south there were a few counties I saw that were even $18 an hour. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think the average was like 15. So that's pretty good.
Well, and hopefully we'll all have had most all of us will have had our COVID shot. So it'll be as all of New Mexico is starting to turn green instead of being yellow or red.
Yeah. Sarun, do you have anything else you want to ask about the census while we have Susan with us?
No, like always, I almost never have anything to ask. I mean, the questions are thorough and you answer in a really good way, but
well, we just had to make sure everyone heard you were at least here with us. Well, Susan, is there anything else you want to add in our latest census update? I'm assuming you'll be happy to come back and join us again, maybe in May or August after the data is out?
Oh, I certainly will. And I think I actually would like to note that we're trying to set up a presentation for census for Andy Haight of the Economics Census to go over their new tool on the Business Pulse Survey and the data that's coming out that really tracks almost real-time data on businesses and their experience of COVID-19 and how it's impacted them. And so that's kind of exciting. And let me look up the date, because I know I put it on my calendar, and at the moment the date is slipping my mind, right?
Well, while you're looking for it, is it open to anyone? Is there a cost?
It's free for anybody who wants. You do have to register, and so if anybody is interested, they are more than welcome to send me an email, and I'll make sure that they get an invitation.
Okay, and your email address is available on our website, which is bieber.unm.edu.
Yeah, and now I'm looking for it. It's current data for communities hit hard by COVID-19. And the date will be March 9th at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And both
Awesome.
Andy Haight and then Bethany DeSalvo, and I don't know Bethany, but Andy Haight has presented several times here in New Mexico in our Data Users Conference, and always does a really good job.
Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to him the few times I've heard him talk. So that's exciting. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We appreciate you taking time to give us an update on the census. And that wraps it up for our first episode of season 2 here at Enchanting Economics in New Mexico. Don't forget to check us out at Bieber, that's bber.unm.edu, or on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube under @UNM Bieber. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.